Talk. I am your host, Gwen Caldwell. It's my honor and privilege to welcome Russell Gould back to the show. Good morning, Russell.
Russell-J. Gould. It's an honor to be on your show, Gwen.
Russell-Gould. Oh,
you'll get it.
No. One of these days, I'm going to learn how to speak a new language. Russell, so it's been a few months since you've been on the show, and I want to talk about the Postmaster General. But before we do that, I just wonder if you have any updates since you've last been on the show that you'd like to share with our audience.
Yes. Right now, we're currently working with the Hawaiian Kingdom out in Hawaii. As most people may or may not know, the natural citizens of Hawaii came out of international bankruptcy in February of 2013 this year. And as they came out of bankruptcy, they hired my postal stations and my postal authorizations as Postmaster General of the world to generate postage stamps for their new country and their new nation as they came out of an international bankruptcy, which was, as most people may or may not know, international bankruptcy moratoriums run 70 years. And so we set up a free trade zone for quantum banking through the Hawaiian Kingdom out in Hawaii, which has strategic metal treaties with the Department of Defense, as well as platform banking for commodities in a free trade zone, which has no tax implications through our postal union that we set up through Bern, Switzerland, back in 2000. So we have a marshaling security against the Internal Revenue Service that anyone who does banking with our world banking system is immune from taxes.
So, Russell, what is the difference between how that's set up there in Hawaii now as opposed to, say, state banks?
Okay. What it is basically the contract itself has freight cargoes on it which generate fee for freight for the Hawaiian stamps that the Hawaiian Kingdom is now using. And so the contracts themselves and the location of Hawaii, a strategic location, can be used as a clearinghouse, a custom clearinghouse for the bills of the ladings, for cargoes, for freights, for commodities, for vessels that you can place in motion, which then have a postal stance under what's classified as a mail fish treaty, so that you can be in maritime ports, port banks for negotiating and transporting goods and cargoes worldwide.
Interesting. So is it possible to do that anywhere, or does it have to be a sovereign nation, or?
Well, contract itself, you've got to remember, Earth is a vessel in the sea of space. And as you walk in and out of these corporate structures in usury, you've got to remember that they're set up in a adverb-verb scenario, which means that the contracts that other people are holding have no enforcement because they're written in past tense and future tense, which violate the authority of the now, because we only have now-time jurisdiction. This is where the correct parse sentence structure grammar comes into play, because the words and the identification for the terms and performance in contract and the duties that are withheld are in the now. So it gives the client, gives the citizen, gives the contracting postmasters that are doing banking in that location now-time jurisdiction and possession of their goods, freights, and then it also directs the free trade zone agreement contracts for military personnel to be mustered into position to safeguard the values.
Nice. Okay, so I want to talk about the Postmaster General. And for new listeners, can you explain what the role of the Postmaster General is and where the authority comes from?
Okay. First of all, you have to comprehend what it takes to be a postmaster. And what it takes to be a postmaster is very simple. You autograph your name across the postage stamp. That makes you a postmaster. But what function does that mean? What does that exactly mean? Well, that means that as contracts, I'm just going to use contracts or vessels, come in and out of your life, you have a rule of closure. The closure that you give to the terms of the contract and the vessels moving in and out of joinder or communion with your contract have to be all up front. That's the first rule of a Postmaster General, is that he gives full closure to those that he's doing business with, so that nobody is surprised on the grammar and this is where the quantum grammar comes into play, because we give such a now time closure to our clients, to our citizens, and to those that are doing business with us, that the first rule that a Postmaster General does is he gives closure to his customers or his employees, those that are working under him. The second thing that he does is, as he gives closure, he does it in the correct parsé sentence structure grammar, so that everybody knows the terms and the qualifications of the math communication or the math interface to go in and out of all languages in the world and lose no deviation in your sentence structure. So we take our contracts and we write them in a quantum phase, and we translate it to German, take it to Italian, switch it over to Chinese, and then maybe over to some Japanese, and maybe over to some Arabic, and then maybe over to some Portuguese, and we translate it back to English, and we lose no deviation in our sentence structure. So you have to have certification on how to do that. And that is a fundamental that I have worked on for 17 years, and I've been very blessed with my capabilities to meet with the head of the UN Postal Administration, Robert Gray, for half an hour at his request, to give him closure to sign up the UN under our postal positioning, because we had superior jurisdiction to control our grammar to be the people that we are. And this was done in April of 2003 at the UN, One UN Plaza. Second of all, before I got to that position and was able to do that, when the United States came out of international bankruptcy in 1999, and when the federal government physically had to shut down and leave the District of Columbia, that was what the Florida Chads were all about, when they vacated the District of Columbia for so many days to make a pathetic attempt to kick off a New World Order, which of course we all know has no authority whatsoever. So because of that, I went into Washington, D.C. 90 days before I saw the 70-year international moratorium of bankruptcy ending, and I was able to file for my position under, as you know, nothing becomes law for 90 days. So I was grandfathered in 96 days in front of them coming out of international bankruptcy, and filed copyrights with the law of the flag to give closure to those who come into business with our land and with our lodial title in the now for now time jurisdiction for postal banking. And so that was done through the U.S. Postal Service through what is known as switching waybills, transit waybills, and these are fundamental things that a Postmaster General uses on a daily basis, just in mechanics for freight forwarding of goods. And which is what a postmaster does, is a postmaster freight forwards goods. And so there are mechanical mechanisms in place that are worldwide. And what I did, which was very unique, and this is why the CIA, the NSA, and Department of Defense pulled me over, is I created a periodic table with my own closure for the Global-Bureau of the Weights and Measures. This is a very valuable piece that most people don't know about. And what has happened is the measurement of movement of vessels, the measurement of value of character, of symbolisms, of hieroglyphics of communication are done through the International Bureau of Weights and Measures, which is an adverb-verb scenario. So I disqualified and syntexed their charters for false and misleading statements and fictitious conveyance of language, and made a position claim for the Global-Bureau of the Weights and Measures.
Okay, we're coming up on a break, Russell. When we come back, I want to ask about the postage stamps canceled by the postmaster, and
Sure.
how that plays into contract. So please stay tuned. Okay, Russell, welcome back to the show. Before we get into how postage is used on documents and contracts, I want you to finish your thought on how the weights and measures affect us and how we can better understand the role it plays in our lives.
Thank you. Yes, the Global-Bureau of the Weights and Measures basically, in a nutshell, measures linear measures such as inches, feet, yards, miles, nautical miles, and square measures, cubic measures, liquid measures, just anything to do with the measurement of placing a value on a thing or a commodity or a measurement of space. And so by giving closure the way that we have, it allows us to have authority for our linear measures, so that when we say that our land circumference is, pi to the whatever, that we have that positioning now, instead of traversing back into the international, which is no terra contract people location. And so we've set up our own charter to control the outcome of our own sums and differences in our own lives, which allow the autonomy of self-governments for each person, as long as that self-government doesn't interfere upon someone else's liberties and rights. We've also taken it to a phase of a periodic table where we've broken down specific gravity, heat, time, temperature, and pressure to molecular structure of molecules, elements, electricity. And so these are things that when you, as a charter party of our corporate structure, that you have closure on before you get into it, so that you can have the necessary closure to control your possessions and to control your equity.
Okay, so all right. There's so much to cover in this short hour, as you well know, Russell.
And I apologize. I didn't even cover the quantum grid system, dealing with latitude, longitude, the harmony of degrees and how the negative words there, and minutes and seconds of weights and measures. So, I mean, I could go on with this concept and these topics for literally hours. The periodic tables that I published were both on a monoatomic level and a periodic table level, and they were placed in a tetrahedron and filed at the Global Bureaus of the Weights and Measures in 2003, 2004. When that was done, 72 hours after I posted it, the CIA took me off the streets along with the NSA and Department of Defense, and we had a conversation about who controlled what and the sums and differences, which at the meeting I was in control. So it was very nice.
So what I see is we're taught culturally through our education system to do mathematics and to think and to measure time in a linear fashion, when in fact we live in this great big giant quantum universe.
Yes.
And basically all of those measures are circular, and we're not taught that. And so we have this knowing within our own being that we are contrary to what we're being taught in our own knowing, but yet that's how the world functions. And so you always feel like you're up against this adversary, so to speak. And I think people are more sensitive to that now than ever, and people are starting to understand quantum physics. They're starting to understand what their role is in the universe. And so I think this is really important stuff that you're doing, because I think it brings everything full circle in that sense. And
yes, the conscious awareness of comprehending where you are in your conscious position in the quantum grid system is very valuable. Comprehending the distances and sums of weights and measures as Earth floats as a vessel in dry dock through the sea of space is very valuable, not only to your conscience, but to your positioning of yourself as a postmaster. Because as a postmaster, that's what allows you to move through this corporate world, since we are all postal employees from cradle to grave. And because of that, that's where, back to your original question, if we can go back on point with that as Postmaster General, Gwen, it's very valuable as a Postmaster General that I give full closure to the citizens that join and charter up with our corporate structures.
Okay, now I want to talk about the postage stamp on documents, contracts, court subpoenas, summons, that kind of thing. Is that a true means of closure in what those documents represent?
Well, what I have created through my postal system is much different. First of all, let's think about what you just said. Postage. What is postage? It's fee for freight. And so you affix ink labels on your document. You attach labels to your documents. You attach postage stamps on your documents. But what are those values backed by? In Hawaii, what we did is I put up some gold, and I did a leverage against backstop the postage stamp backed by gold. Now, as the citizen or the charter party autographs across that stamp, they have a treaty bond fee for the movement and voyage of their freight and contract of their contracts. And so from that positioning, now other postmasters can come in communion or in joinder with the cargo words, the cargo values, and the vessel flags. Because as we know, the law of the flag on the vessels or on the contracts, you first must look at the flag, which then establishes what venue or administrative mechanics you are using to move and put your contract or your vessels on a voyage.
So the stamp is the flag?
No, the stamp is not the flag.
Okay.
The stamp is separate from the flag. The flag itself must be aboard the vessel to give closure to all who come into business with the owner or the captain of that vessel, and it sets the rules and regulations for the guidelines. This is where the Pentagon came into a lease contract with me on the Title IV 1.9 grammar flag. And so with David and myself. So the Pentagon leased the flag from us because they knew that in order to be vessels going in and out of foreign vessels in dry dock and going onto foreign lands, that they had to have correctness in their grammar structure. And so they signed leases with us through the Department of Navy's office for the movement of vessels offshore.
Okay, we are coming up on a break, Russell, but when we come back, I just want to wrap my head around this, the postage stamps on the documents, because I see a lot of people doing this, and I want to know how you do that correctly and what the purpose is of that when we come back.
At Orion News Talk, we know times are bad. Ever since 9/11, a battle has been waging against we the people. Our Constitution is under attack. A clandestine war has been launched against this country and the world. The Federal Reserve Cartel has bankrupted our nation and destroyed our economy. Our executive, legislative, and judicial branches have been turned against us. But the Declaration of Independence gives us the right to alter and abolish bad government. Our leaders and our law enforcement are supposed to uphold and protect our Constitution and to fight all enemies, foreign and domestic. They're not. So we ask you to join us to accept that vow as we stand together against the New World Order. We will not allow our country and our freedom to be taken. And to the powers that be, we say this: we will win this fight. We will defeat you. So keep listening and tell a friend, because this battle is far from over. Orion News Talk, news and views beyond the mainstream media.
Welcome back to the show, Russell.
Thank you very much, Gwen.
I want to get my arms around summons, or when you're served with something to appear in court. no matter what it's on, if it's a foreclosure or you didn't show up for court, you ordered a show cause, whatever it is, the notary public always puts a stamp or a seal on that document before it's served. What does that mean, and how should we respond?
Okay. If your documents have fees for freight, which are postage on the vessel or on the contract, at that point, somebody's paid a fee somewhere to ship that contract or that vessel into your matrix or into your world. Now, depending on the joinder that the courts have with you, because the United States judicial system is closed right now. It has no authority whatsoever, and those judges have no authority whatsoever because of the adverb format that they're writing in. All judges in the United States write with a second grade reading and writing level. But they have closure of what correctness is. They make choices with a volition not to do it. So what they do is they hire their private thugs, their pirates, and they leave their foreign vessels in dry dock because the courthouse is a foreign vessel in dry dock. The judge sits behind a yellow fringe flag with a spire on top if it's in a state court for martial law, or an eagle on the top with the wings out for martial law under administrative mechanics. So because it's a martial law system, martial law suspends all jurisdiction. Because martial law has already been claimed and already is being manifested, this is what we spoke about earlier about the flag being aboard the vessel, because that gives closure to all who choose to go into contract with those people flying those banners, those flags, those flag standards. And for those who wish to educate themselves, please go to Army Regulation 840-10, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29 to please educate themselves so that they don't fall into the traps of closure through the law of the flag. And that will give the audience enough wherewithal, those who choose to do their own searching for their own recovery of their own truth, of their own correctness. That is a good place to start to learn on the mechanics of the law of the flag. Because that foreign judge only has jurisdiction in his courthouse, he hires a vessel to go serve a summons or a subpoena on someone. The vessel he hires is typically the sheriff's department, who flies a yellow fringe flag, typically 3x5, which shows that he's under military parade movements. So once again, showing you that he's in a state of martial law, he shows up at your house and hands you a contract or a vessel. A vessel is classified as anything that can be put into motion. If you drop a piece of paper, it's something that can be put into motion. If you hand it and ship it over to another person, it can also be put into motion. Therefore, contracts are vessels. As that vessel arrives on your doorstep, you have choices to make. Judging on the criteria of the summons, if it has a file fee on it, then you know that it has been filed in a timely manner. If it does not have a file stamp on it, you know that it is not valid. Therefore, the document does not need to be delivered to you, and you simply tell them that that's an undeliverable document and tell them to take it off until the fee's been paid for the freight, for the postage, because you're a postmaster, or at least I'm a Postmaster General, so I comprehend on how to run those mechanics in those locations. So as the summons shows up, depending on what venue you're in, because of the martial law, the courts are not playing by very many rules. Therefore, not by playing it by any rules, because they can make it up as they go, because they have guns and clubs and they can hurt you. And this is their feel about it. It has nothing to do with correctness. It has to do with might makes right. And so they beat you up, they pump you full of drugs, they'll send you to their mental institutions, and they'll hold up their fingers and they say, how many fingers am I holding? And even though they may be holding up 3 fingers, if you say 3, they're going to say, no, this is 5. Keep pumping this man full of drugs, keep dumbing him down so he believes a lie. And this is what the U.S. judicial system does to everyone. As most people may or may not know who are listening to the show, I disqualified the United States Supreme Court on October 1st of 2004. At that point, the head judge and several judges retired immediately because they realized under knowledge and negligence they had been disqualified. Because the court system uses postage stamps through the judge of the court, who in fact is the clerk, her gavel makes clangs and leaves marks on your paperwork. The judge, who is an actor under Federal Rules Civil Procedure 44.1, is only a foreign entity under he court, not jury, which is an adverb scenario, which means that he is making it up as he goes, and he hides behind the fact that he can pay people to go beat you up. Because the clerk of court is in fact the judge, not the judge. He's just an actor sitting there in a black robe trying to get you to talk to him. If you do not talk to him, he will hit you up with their standard MO, contempt of court. When you go, then they use their physicality on you. And that's your freedom. Welcome to America. No mercy for the sheep. Because you are sheep and people don't know how to contract using the correct parse sentence structure grammar, and because they don't comprehend the timelines of what the judicial system is doing, the judicial system functions on time unless they just engage in full martial law, where they beat the hell out of you, stick you in a cell, stick a TV monitor in there, and then turn on the TV and have a judge do a simulation under Title 18, 1343 wire fraud and engage in wire fraud against the individual because they're not giving anyone the right of grievance or a right of a fair trial. And because they call it fair trial, they add insult to injury and stick you in a jury trial. The jury is in a box. Under the laws of boxing in your federal styles manual, you will learn that anything in a box is omitted, so they're not there. Plus, the juries are on two different vectors, two different planes. 1/6 juries sit up 1 foot higher than the other jury, or 8 inches higher than the other jury, therefore breaking the rules of continuance of evidence. So if you go back to your original question, Gwen, about a stamped document coming to your foreign vessel in dry dock and being served on you, it just depends on what the person's knowledge is on how to navigate himself through the illusion of the guns and clubs, because that's all they got.
So when that comes, can you return it with your own stamp, canceled, and and bring closure to that, whatever it is that they're trying to contract with you?
Well, the problem is that the clerk of courts pays for her file stamps with a bill of the lading called a postage stamp or a Federal Reserve note. Since the United States Postal Service authorizes the banks that are currently on our lands, and the United States Postal Service no longer has a constitution in compliance with Title 39, Section 101, Section A, Section B, about how postal services are supposed to have posted and give closure of a constitution to allow them to be a valid post office. Therefore, the whole thing is a lie from cradle to grave, because the United States Post Office is a defunct entity with no closure and no constitution, thus disqualifying and closing the clerk's capability, the clerk of court, to send you a contract because she's using fraud from A to B.
Wonderful.
It is what it is. I didn't vacate the Constitution. They vacated the Constitution. They attempted a very pathetic try to kick off a pathetic New World Order that has global ramifications to steal everyone's rights.
So, well, I want to, so do we have to contract with the court? Do we have to agree to do that, or else? Or do you just have to do a ton of research and figure it out?
Well, here's the thing. Can we wait till after break for this?
Yeah. This is Morning Brew on the Orion Talk Radio Network in 1650 AM, Tonawanda, New York. Russell and I will be back in just a few minutes. Please stay tuned. Welcome back to the show, Russell.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so I guess what I want to know is how in the hell do you not contract with these people that are continually coming after you for things that you know are absolutely fraudulent, and that they're fraudulent, but yet we unwittingly, I think, contract with them. How do we avoid that, or how do we stop the contract?
Well, first of all, you've got to comprehend how to be a postmaster at the post office. And you have to comprehend that if someone serves you a document, they probably are going to come back for another piece because they know they can beat you up. So what we do is we file our C letters and our C passes in a timely manner at the nearest post office to the courthouse. And we don't go file in the courthouse because all the courts are foreign vessels and dry dock, and they're closed. Because the courts are closed, we don't want to give them cognizance and file with them. So we file our ship's papers and in a timely manner as a neutral vessel, moving yourself into the postal land, which is the foreign vessel and dry dock. The court itself is the contract that you file at the post office. That is the court, because the judge is just an actor under 44.1, and the clerk of courts in the U.S. don't have any authorization because their postage stamps aren't no good. Because their postage stamps aren't no good, we file at the local post office to the courthouse and then subpoena ourselves as a witness into the foreign vessels in dry dock. So you use the postal positioning and the postal employees as your safeguard against the battery of public safety officers that come against you. Now, you got to remember, police are only collecting their paycheck. Some are doing things bad with volitions, and some are very good people. But police officers in general function as a position for public safety. As a position for public safety, they ask for your credentials, and this is where comprehending how one uses and conducts his ship's papers is very, very valuable to dealing with these public safety officers. And if anyone has any questions out there, please email me at forthetreasury@gmail.com, and I can get more in depth on how to use your ship's papers and how to stop some of these atrocities that are facing the citizens who just haven't taken the time to study it so in depth like I have. And so if anyone out there has problems with this bombardment, that's forthetreasury@gmail.com, and I'll try to get back to you as quick as I can. But to answer your question, Gwen, you use the postal system to safeguard yourself against those, because the police officers themselves also work for the post office. They have driver's licenses. The Department of Transportation for each state gets its authorization through the U.S. Postal Service. Of course, the U.S. Postal Service doesn't have any authorization because they don't have a constitution. So you're stuck in a catch-22. So we file constitutions with our contracts that we file at the post office to give closure that we are these citizens moving forward in a peaceful manner to stop and correct false and misleading statements with using correct sentence structure, communication, parse, syntax, grammar.
Okay, now our time is getting short, but I see all kinds of people out there claiming to be Postmaster Generals. How many damn Postmaster Generals are there supposed to be on this planet? Number one. And number two, I believe that by using this verbiage that they are committing fraud and misguiding and misleading a whole lot of people, and they're making themselves quite a sum of money doing it. And I wonder if you could address that.
First of all, there's only one, and that's me. And that's the way I know that is I met with 82 ambassadors at the United Nations who sat down with me as Postmaster General, took my contracts and forwarded them to their nearest postal system, their nearest banking for their countries. Second of all, I met with the head of the UN postal system, Robert Gray, in 2003, who put his postal venue under my tutelage due to the fact that I had superior knowledge of what it meant to be a Postmaster General, and I have authenticated it through my actions through the years. So there is only one Postmaster-General of our world, and that would be me. Regardless of what anyone would claim, that would be false and misleading. And the world will vote it in. The citizens who know and have used the techniques and already know, and they're very pleased with the outcome of how the bombardment of public safety officers either goes away, but typically the public safety officers, because they're postal employees, there are things that their education is very limited, and they're following orders, and it's the people behind them that have a volition to steal, plunder, and put into peril citizens and take all their equity. So it's a very sad thing to see. Anyone who is stuck working with the U.S. judicial system is being scammed, and they are losing all their money, they're losing all their equity, and they're losing all their rights because they're using false and misleading statements. And the U.S. judicial system uses our technology to not join with anything because they know nothing is correct that's being presented to them.
Oh, my God. It is pitiful. Okay, so Russell, we're down to about 3 minutes. I would like you to give out your contact information again, if you would, please.
Yes.
And also, if you've got any closing thoughts that you want to share with the listening audience, now would be the time to do it.
Okay. You can reach me at forthetreasury@gmail.com. That's FORTREASURY@gmail.com. And that's the best way to reach me. If I don't get back with you right away, I will do my best to get back with you as quick as I can. And for the people listening out there, just continue to study your grammar, continue to study the mechanics of how things move on this planet from point A to point B, and know that there are good people in high places, whether we know it or not, that are going to do the right thing.
Okay, I got one last question to ask you, Russell.
Sure.
We're seeing all kinds of chatter about martial law and about President Obama. I mean, he's had the week from hell.
Well, you got to remember, he's a Johnny-come-lately. He really just follows orders. I conducted a military court-martialing of George Walker Bush, Richard Bruce Cheney in Washington, D.C. every 45 days for 4 years. And so there were guidelines that were set there years ago with me as Postmaster General and Comptroller of the global currency and Treasurer of the country that provide a safeguard for the citizens against these false and misleading statements of politics. The U.S. Congress was shut down. The House and Senate were both shut down during that martial law time, and we put passing bills in saying that they couldn't pass any laws against our citizens. So I have put in a construct to safeguard citizens against things that are occurring now, because you got to remember, these people are just Johnny-come-latelys.
So when we hear all this chatter, what should our response be, and how do we get to the bottom of what the truth is?
If the military shows up in your front door, you ask them where their contract with the Postmaster General Russell-J. Gould is, and you have me deal with them. Believe me, I've walked onto military bases. I know how to deal with the sort.
Yay! Okay, Russell's going to save us from martial law, you guys. He said it here live, right on Morning Brew.